Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm 𝐷𝐼𝐿 Vo, your favorite nail artist from 𝐷𝐼𝐿 Vo shop. Partnering with Dreamtime Creation, together we are offering you high quality crystal and exclusive nail art products. So for today's tutorial, we are going to go through zodiac design, and I am going to show you this amazing Aries zodiac nails using our gel color for painting, our stained glass gel for shading, our art gel for detail, and don't forget about Vo.Tino acetone proof art brushes. But before we get into it, if you are a big fan of nail art, especially nail art tutorial, you're coming to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload it every week. So if that in any of your interest, please spill gel polish over the like button and wipe it up over and over until you accidentally hit like 1,000,000 times. Also, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And turn on all notifications so you don't miss out any of our weekly upload. Now, without no further ado, let's get started. First, I'm using Halo gel color mixed with pigment base just to make a pale yellow foundation. And now I'm gonna start sketching her, and I'm using the 7mm brush, which is a detail brush. And I'm using my shadow gel to sketch. The reason why I use shadow because it's semi-opaque, which means that you can use it for detail, you can use it for coloring, and you can use it for shading. That is make it a perfect material, especially when it comes to rough sketch. And remember that when it comes to thin detail like this, you have to make sure that the brush pressure is light, only using the tip of your brush. And you notice that this is a 7mm detail, and I'm going back and forth with the coloring brush. I use a coloring brush for shading. This brush can do exactly what an ombre brush would do, but in super tiny area. And I do use flash cure in between. Just when I'm happy with the details, I will want to flash cure just to seal the deals. See, when I'm switching to the coloring brush, I prefer to start out the portrait with just only shadow gel, so you don't have to waste time switching color in between. At the young age, I started out with pencil sketching, so this is an old habit of mine. I find it incredibly useful, especially when it comes to saving time. Now, if you notice the distance between the eyes to the end equal to the distance between the eyes to the end of the nose, the edge of the eyes equal to the edge of the nose is where I start drawing the tip of my nose. Start with the left nostril, then we're gonna match it with the right nostril. I use my 7mm brush to lightly shade the area for sharp edge, then use my coloring brush to blend out the edge. Now I always clean my coloring brush in between with alcohol for you to be able to shade. You have to keep it gel free. Okay, now the distance between the eyes is equal to the distance between the nose and the mouth. The upper lip cupid bow curves just the same at the tip of the nose. Now you see all three curves is very similar to each other's. I'm using the eyeball to measure the distance of the lips. Same thing for the right side. From the eyeball, go all the way down, draw out, and then connect your lips all together. Now I'm gonna mark the underneath of my lips, then connect to both ends of the lips, fill in with the little shadow, and blend it out. Make sure you leave the little empty space for the highlight in the lips. Now I draw out the bottom chin, measure the bottom of my lip, and this is where my first curvature is. Now the middle of the lip is where my second curvature is. Now from the edge of both eyes, draw all the way down. We're gonna draw in some contour for her, just to give her a much higher cheekbone. I'm just using my 7mm, just lightly draw out my line, and then I can color it using my coloring brush, but everything has to be nice and light. And don't forget to use your coloring brush and make sure it's clean to shade in between. See how I shade out the edge to make sure that it's nice and soft. But remember, still keep the contrast. I'm shadow a little bit under the nose. The distance of my forehead is equal to the distance of my nose. I'll start drawing in her hair with my 7mm brush, and we're gonna give her a pink, purple, and blue afro. Now again, using the 7mm brush to draw in the texture of the hair strand. I'm gonna draw a bow line in her forehead and color it in. This will be the shadow cascade underneath the hair. Use a coloring brush to shade lightly along the edge of the shadow. Don't forget to cure in between the process. You can even flash cure in between and apply a thin layer of shadow on top to smooth it out. Now from the distance between the mouth to the edge of the face, I'm gonna draw my neckline in between. Slant out for the shoulder and smooth it out. I'm switching back and forth between my coloring brush and my liner brush. This half circle right here is gonna be a planet that Aries is holding. I'm gonna use my coloring brush to shade it all the way in the middle. I'm gonna use a little bit more heavy shading because we're about to move to the next step. With my liner brush, I am drawing the symbol is like an M. Then I'm gonna fill in this space right here, really dark with shadow. This is gonna be the contour for her neck to measure the dimension of her neck. Then I'm gonna use my coloring brush to blend out the edge. Make sure you take your time just to keep that contrast between dark and light. I can blend step by step slowly all along the edge, and then I can go back to smooth it out. See how it's not all the way blend out? Now I'm gonna go back. See? I'm gonna go back and blend out the second time. So this second layer gonna be much thinner than the first layer. So now you see a nice ombre, but we still able to keep that fine contrast. This is to measure the curvature of the surface. If the curve is big, then the gradient gonna be big. But if the curve is small, then the gradient gonna be small. Same for her cheek. Color it in. Make sure that you have a nice contrast. This should be very easy because you technically do this the second time. You already have the sketch down. All you need to do is trace it back darker. And don't forget to lightly blend the edge out in between. Same with the eyes and the nose. Make sure you trace it back darker to build up her contrast. This second step right here, this is when we're gonna build her face structure. Her cheekbone, her lip, her shading. And I am using pigment beige just to add that highlight in all between the pasty yellow area and her eyes. Now I'm gonna add blue for her eyes. I use stained glass gel number 11 to give the eyeball a little shading. Now I'm gonna mix brown color with pigment beige to make a light brown. I'm gonna trace in all the shadow area. Now my gel color I built for art, so it's very opaque. That's why I don't mind to shade it with shadow first, because I know that I can cover it with gel color. Shade underneath the eyes, shade both sides of the nose. You can use a coloring brush or the liner brush, that's up to you. I like to use my coloring brush for this. And yes, I do cure in between. Now when it comes to gel polish, you're not supposed to flash cure because it might wrinkle on you. But the way that I apply this gel with the coloring brush is very thin, so it's completely safe. Because if you really notice my brush, there's barely any gel on it at all. I take very little gel and I color it lightly and slowly. So it's not gloppy, it's not thick. When you dust top coat over, it's gonna be nice and flat. This is a healthy habit that you should be able to practice and achieve for painting, especially when it comes to painting portrait. Just because you deal with so many layers, you deal with a shadow layer, you deal with a color layer, and later on, you're gonna highlight, you're gonna contour, you're gonna add glow to it. You got to be able to paint this really thin. That way, you don't have any obstacle on the surface. The surface is nice and flat, so you can blend it as much as you like. If the surface is bumpy, it's gonna be very hard to blend because it's gonna show shadow and highlight and texture, and you don't want none of that. Now you can see here, I'm using eggplant. This is my second layer. Now the purpose of this eggplant color is also used for shadow, but it's much deeper than the brown. That's why the brown layer I apply very thin, because I know that I'm gonna have a second layer on it. This eggplant only lay a little bit in between the brown and the yellow. You don't want to completely cover the brown. And most artists will use black colors. But you see, black gel, it doesn't have any colors, so it doesn't add glow to the face like eggplant does. This is a very healthy habit to learn when it comes to shadowing. Now, when I'm finished up shadow in her face, I'm gonna move to orange gel colors. I blend it just in between the eggplant and the yellow. Now I use pigment base for highlight in between all the yellow area. You only want to leave just a little bit of yellow glow to the face, but the rest you need to cover it completely with white. Now move to black art gel. I am gonna detail out her face. Now note that this is not shadowing, this is not outlining. This is for her eyebrow, her eyelash, and her nostril. I'm gonna add a nose ring for her and line out her lips. I'm drawing an Aries zodiac symbol on for her. And I also use it to add in a little accessory for her. The reason why I use art gel, because art gel, unlike gel polish, it gives you more control, it stays still for you, especially the black and the white art gel is the most popular because people use it a lot in art, especially when it comes to something like this. Now I'm gonna use the red and the pink. I'm mixing it together and shade up her lips. This is like sunset colors. Now you have to leave a little highlight for her lip to add dimension to it. Now I'm gonna use 𝐸𝐞𝐥 gel number 6 to add blush for her. It's completely different than gel color because it doesn't cover up the background. Okay, one last round with pigment base for all the highlight in the background. I'm using black art gel to add in the detail for the planet. This looks a little bit like our planet Earth. And of course, I'm using my detail brush, 7mm. You just use the tip of the brush and just shake lightly. Now, you're gonna outline around the circle. I'm gonna add color in for the planet. I'm using my blue gel color. And then I'm lightly shade it out with a clean coloring brush. And then I'm gonna mix a red-pink color for this. And then I'm going to use magenta, which is like a bridge between the blue and the pink. I'm using ultramarine just to add depth for the blue color. And then throw in a few yellow gel color and then eggplant gel color. I'm using 𝐸𝐞𝐥 gel number 11 to add in a little shading for the circle. And then move on to the hair. This is really easy because the hair color scheme is just the same as the color scheme of the planet. I'm using 𝐸𝐞𝐥 gel number 4 so I can still see the hair detail. And then I'm gonna blend in the shadow with 𝐸𝐞𝐥 gel number 13. This is like a deep purples. Now I'm using white art gel to add in tiny little white highlight for the hair. Now I know that it's tiny, so I will explain for you where to apply. You don't want to apply it on the purple because the purple is a shadow. You want to apply on the pink because the pink is a lighter area. So the white, you want to apply it just a little bit in between the pink. So now you see the gradient is purple and then pink and then white. And now black art gel to add further detail. And the black art gel opposite from the white is stayed right in the purple. Because the purple is shadow, right? So now a new gradient is black, purple, pink, and then white. This will make the hair really pop. And then I use blue gel color just to add in a little blue pearl in between her afro. So it's like her hair is a Milky Way and then the blue is like a little planet revolving in it. And don't forget to cure in between when you layer with colors. Now let's matte everything and cure for 60 seconds in LED. This is the second finger. So this is a finger on her right side, so I'm gonna draw a ram horn right on it. Of course, I have to lay 2 fingers next to each other just to measure the right position of the horn. But basically, the distance is from her hair to about the middle of her lips. And then I'm gonna go ahead and draw in the third line, so this will add dimension to the ram horn. And I want you to sketch it really, really light. Because now you're gonna draw in this little line for the layer of the horn. So the horn is not completely smooth. It's actually made up of different layers. So all of this transition, that is the reason why I choose shadow gel instead of art gel. Because I don't want anything too structured. I just want something fluid so I can lightly sketch it, because then later on I can alter it and I can erase it if I want to. And besides the point that it's really fast to use shadow, way faster than to use art gel, because shadow is way lighter than art gel. Of course, this type of sketching could never be used for finished detail. It could only be used for pre-sketch. And this detail right here is part of her hair because it's on the right side of her hair. So I want to extend in the afro out just to make it voluminous. And don't get freaked out by the abundant amount of detail, because later on, remember that there's gonna be color on it, so there's gonna be distinction between different parts of the painting. And this little circle right here, that is all the planet that gonna be revolving around Aries. And then I'm gonna add in between little creative detail like floral details and little vine and little leaf, just to fill all that space in between. This is pretty much like freestyle. You can just draw whatever you want as long as you fill in those space. I find squirrely pattern and lacy pattern really work best for me, and I just add a little circle in between. Now in between the hair and the planet is gonna be stained glass. I'm just making these light straight line and I'm just crisscrossing them between each others. After that, you wanna cure for 60 seconds and then add in colors. I'm using magenta gel colors and I am using coloring brush. And the reason why I added very thin, because later on there's gonna be a bunch of different color on here, so I don't want it to be gloppy and chunky and thick. Later on, if I don't have enough color, then I can always go back and add in more colors. That way you can flash cure in between and the gel will not wrinkle on you because it's so thin. Now this is blue gel color, and still I stroke it very thin just like the magenta, but I want to overlap the magenta a little bit. And the part where the blue is super light, it actually blends with the halo behind it. Now let's move on to orange gel colors. And still you want to apply very light, and you want to overlap the magenta. So when the orange overlap the magenta, in between it creates this metal color that are actually very pretty. So it makes the whole glow up even more. And now I'm using shadow gel color to blend in the shadow. And I actually blend each individual layer just to show the texture of the whole. And I'm using my coloring brush, by the way. And these shadow gel are literally laying on top of all the color that you just put on. That's why in the beginning you need to add very thin layer. Is for that reason, because you're gonna add in more color on top of it. And the more bumpy your surface is, the harder it is to draw. So remember to take note on this. Now I use a blood red stained glass gel number 14 to blend in between the orange and the black. Then use stained glass gel number 4 to fill in with the hair. Just like the other nails, you just fill it all in, and I use stained glass gel because I can still see the hair colors. Then fill it all in with purple stained glass gel, and this is number 13 and then number 14 for the red. I'm using my coloring brush to shade it all the stained glass color this time. Then I will use orange gel color just to fill in between the little stained glass and kind of blend it out. Again, as you see here, I stroke lightly and then now I stroke it really deep, and you can see the difference between colors. This is another beauty about gel color. It can be opaque, but if you stroke thin enough, it can be semi-transparent for you. That makes it wonderful for coloring, and it's also wonderful for shading and blending. And I'm trying to shade the outer layer of the stained glass, but when it gets close to the horn and the hair, I'm gonna leave it pretty bright. And you can see here, I'm switching to yellow, which is a brighter color when I'm getting to the metals. That way, the hair and the horn, it can pop more because it's lighter in the background. Now, if you see here, I am using black art gel to outline the horn. Usually, if the surface is pretty bumpy, it's gonna be very hard to detail. And that is when people use matte top coat to apply on the surface just to level it out. And the matte surface is easier to paint on than a shine surface. But as you see here, I don't have to put matte top coat on because all the color gel that I put on are very thin. That's why when it comes to color gel polish, you have to have a very quality gel polish that can ensure that you can paint in thin detail and it's still gonna be very vivid in colors. Now I'm gonna work my way all the way to the tip of the horn using my 7mm detail brush. And if you want, you can also use flash cure in between, but remember that if you want to flash cure for just a few seconds, you have to make sure that your stroke is nice and thin, because if your application is way too thick, then what happens is it's only flash cure on the top and it might collapse on you and wrinkle up the gel. So remember, when it comes to flash cure, your number one rule is very thin, or using the gel that are semi-transparent, because a semi-transparent or a clear gel, the light can pass all the way through, not just on the top, but all the way through very quickly. That way, transparent gel will never get wrinkle on you. Same with thin application. As you can see here, all my detail are hairline, very thin. And I apply white art gel as highlight, and I applied it just inside the black line, because those black line is what gonna separate the horn from the hair. And this is my 10mm brush, so all of my liner and detail brush, what you notice here is that the body is very thin. And I have it custom like that because if you accidentally apply too much pressure on your brush, instead of making the design thicker, the brush is gonna bend and it's gonna absorb your impact. And now I use my coloring brush, which is way opposite. Coloring brush have very thick root. And I have it custom very thick because if you want to splash out all the gel from your brush when you're coloring, all you have to do is apply a little pressure and your stroke will get thicker very quickly. That's what makes it an ideal brush for coloring or filling or shading. Its body structure is extremely essential. What I'm doing here is that I'm gonna try to fill up all the space, and I'm using mostly cold color like blue and purple just to balance out the top of the design, so the stained glass right in the middle can be nice and bright and warm. These gonna be like planet design, and they are gonna revolve around Aries. That will add more of a celestial vibe for Aries, just to balance out Aries' strong and fiery personality. And the reason why I use stained glass gel now instead of gel color, because unless the design is extremely detailed like a face or an object, I'd rather start out with stained glass gel first. Then I'm gonna use gel color to shadow or to highlight. Just because stained glass gel is a tad bit more easier to shade than gel colors. Because stained glass gel is semi-transparent, so it's built strictly for shading. With gel color, you can also shade and you can also color at the same time. When it comes to something like this, you can either mimic what I'm doing or the color scheme, or you can make your own color scheme. I find that most beginner, it's easier for them to mimic exactly what I'm doing. And after that have been succeeded, then they can move on to a more creative route and have their own colors. Okay, so after all this, I'm gonna finish it up and I'm gonna apply matted and cure for 60 seconds. And here is my Aries. This is a very healthy set to practice because it involves so many techniques that you require to be an artist. Alright everyone, that's it for today. And until next time, thank you for watching.